Welcome to the Base Path Podcast, brought to you by New England Baseball Journal. I'm your host, Dan Guttenplan. Today's guest took over a program in the Founders League and after his 0-18 season in 2019, and he has turned it into one of the top programs in the league. Ty Wosleger is the head coach at Westminster School. Hey, Ty, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Dan, appreciate you guys having me on and for the kind words in the introduction.
Oh, yeah. Well, you earned them. That's quite a turnaround that you guys have had there. And especially, you mix in the pandemic. It hasn't been the easiest time to be a head prep school coach and, a lot of changes to the college baseball game and everything else. What's your experience been like at Westminster over the last, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, it's been great. So I came over to Westy. My wife, who's the head girls soccer coach here, they won a Class A New England championship 2 years ago. She was here and I was doing the commute over to Hotchkiss. So made a decision to join her here and had the full support of the admissions office and the athletic office. And they've stood by me. I mean, they've made sure that we've gotten the guys that we go after and support in terms of a Florida trip and playing games at Duncan Park and uniforms and everything. So it's been a full community and team effort. I'm proud of what we've gotten done here. And I think there's still more to do.
Yeah, I know we've talked about this, that Westminster has that hockey tradition and it kind of is viewed as a hockey school. What did you want to do to kind of establish it as like, hey, it's not just a hockey school. We're going to have top baseball players. And you have had top baseball players who've gone on to play places like BC, since you've been there. What did you do to kind of change the narrative or just make it more of a baseball destination?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say that rather than think about it like, how can I make this a baseball destination? I've sort of embraced the fact that our hockey program is as successful as it's been. And Tim Jonkis and Ben Harp have done a great job with that program. And we've gotten guys that are either baseball hockey guys. And so they want to come to Westy because of our hockey program and now the success of our baseball program and go to one of the schools in New England that may have the best hockey baseball combination, or at least one of the top 3 to 5. And then in addition to that, I've used hockey and the success of some of our other programs like that girls soccer program to say, hey, sports matter here. They matter here and kids get behind it. And we get top tier athletes that go on to play at really good schools, and kids want to go to places where the athletics are good. So that part was actually really helpful to say, come support our hockey program or play in it if you're a hockey baseball guy. And I always say athletics, it's like the front door to any of these institutions, whether it's a prep school or a college. I mean, look at some of the highest achieving colleges and universities, whether it's winning a national title in football or in baseball or whatever sport, UConn and basketball, the number of applications goes up dramatically to the school, and then the school can be more selective in who they accept. So I think us being good in sports, specifically in hockey, has helped the baseball program and it's helped the school in general.
Yeah. And it sounds like, so you took over, like I said, if we could kind of go back to that 2020 season where they're coming off an 0-18 record. Obviously, you're trying to change, I guess, the culture a little bit where guys are, expecting to win and, really being confident when they take the field. And it sounds like you even had maybe some conversations with admissions like, hey, we're going to kind of go after some guys here and maybe need your help with that, either from a financial aid standpoint or, just to get them in the school. What was kind of the first few things that you did or, that you really wanted to do when you took over at Westy?
Yeah, it's a great question. And my dad's been a mentor for me during my playing days, but even more so in my coaching days. And he coached me in high school, and then he coached at Wesleyan, and then he was coaching at Choate, so a Founders League opponent. And even when he was a Founders League opponent, we're talking on a daily basis about different things. And he just kept reminding me, it's not getting good and having success isn't going to happen overnight. The results may not happen overnight, but if you establish a process and in this particular situation, a culture, the rest will sort of take care of itself as time goes along. And so one of the first things in building that culture is going out and finding guys that are baseball guys that play in the summer, that want to play in the fall, that live and breathe the game. Not too many kids nowadays have high baseball IQs. So going out and finding kids that think the game was important to me. And knowing that I wasn't going to get, 8 to 10 guys in that first year, I kind of thought to myself, let's build this, 4 or 5 guys if we can with support from the school, but establish that culture of we're going to get in workouts early in the morning or after school or on Sundays when other people might be, taking the time to work on other things. Our guys are going to be getting after it because we got some ground to make up. And so culture was number one, just establishing how we're going to do things within our program. Going out and recruiting talent was important too. And then building a coaching staff. I mean, we've got a great coaching staff. I believe in everything that the 4 of us do, and we're able to go out and recruit high level kids. But yeah, stepping in, I think the first thing that I did was just see how can I change the culture here and get us moving in the right direction. And the results came faster than I thought they would. Sometimes this process can take a while. It took quite a few years in my last stop, but it happened much quicker than I thought here. And that's a testament to the support of the school and the admissions office getting kids here who could really play.
Yeah, and you mentioned getting the right staff in place. Your dad ended up on your staff. I know at one point, is he still coaching on your staff?
Yeah, so he's our hitting coach. We do a deep dive every game, every practice into hitting. A lot of analytics are involved while still keeping involved, just feel and bat to ball skills and that kind of thing. We also have a pitching coach, John Nagel, who's pitched in college and is currently an NECBL assistant with the Bristol Blues. And then the previous head coach, Sean Desjardins, who played Division I baseball at CCSU, he handles our outfielder. So we're able to divide up positionally and work on things with 4 different coaches. And we're also able to do a much deeper dive into hitting than most programs can, just because we have individualized coaches for those different areas.
Yeah, you mentioned the use of analytics with your hitting analysis. What type of information are you giving to players, and what type of technology are you using to get it?
Yeah, great question. So I think we're one of the only high schools in the Northeast that has TrackMan. A lot of high schools, they'll have a Rapsodo or a Hit Tracks, and those they help. But TrackMan's next level. When we're doing live ABs, we're able to see all the data from the pitcher, all the data from the hitter. It allows us to take the competitions we do in practice to the next level. We got to keep there's criteria. You got to keep your launch angle between these 2 numbers and taking a look at exit velo, and then off the mound, the data is just incredible for feedback for the guys. And they're using TrackMan at their summer ball facilities. So to be able to sync up what they do here with their profile on TrackMan and throwing at their facilities is big, because then a college coach can see their entire body of work, and there's no like, here's the PDF from this technology, and then here's another file here. So guys enjoy that. I think other than that, I mean, that's our biggest piece of technology that we're using. We're also big into using different tools in our practices to make practice as difficult as it can be. And, our big thing is let's be consistent, train variable movement and be consistent in doing it. And then when we get to the game, the idea there is if you can make practice really a lot harder than the stuff you're going to see in the game, you should have some success. Maybe not in a small sample size, but over the course of a 20 to 25 game prep season, you'll find success.
Yeah, and so you mentioned that quick turnaround. It happened a little bit faster than you expected. When did you start to get a sense like, hey, this is working? This is, what I had in mind when I wanted to change the culture?
Yeah, so I would say we benefited from a shortened Founders League season in 2021. The pandemic was still, we were still feeling the effects of the pandemic. And so we didn't play. We played a shortened season against a small cohort of schools. And that allowed me an additional year of recruiting. And I think going out and having targeted kids, one kid that comes to mind is just the Massey brothers. And I had known Bill Massey, who's a baseball lifer, since I was in high school. And so to get his older son, who was a hockey baseball guy, and we touched on that earlier, was sort of when things started to turn towards, all right, we got a really good shortstop, a Division I shortstop here. We got the inside track to his brother, who's going to be a Division I catcher. We should be in good shape here. And then guys started to filter in around those guys. There was an uptick in interest locally. And so 25% of our students here at Westminster are day students in the surrounding towns. Simsbury, Avon, Granby, Canton are all really good sports towns. So you can go out and across the board, not just in baseball, go get some day students who they don't have to board and spend the entire, bulk of the year on campus, even though that's a really great thing in a lot of ways. They still retain some level of family life, and they're getting a top-notch education and also playing at a really high level in the sport that they choose to come play. So getting the best in Simsbury and some surrounding towns really started to turn the needle a little bit, in addition to those core pieces. You got to be strong up the middle. And we checked those boxes early on, and I made that clear in admissions. And then those supplemental pieces on the mound and corner infield, outfield spots were the pieces that kind of took us to, wow, we're not going to be 500. We're going to be a team to contend with in the league.
How do you find those guys, those local guys like the Simsbury guys? Are you involved in the travel baseball scene, or are you, getting out and scouting these guys like during your prep school season?
Yeah, I also run youth baseball camps in town here during breaks in the winter and during the summer, and start to get an early read on, what does Simsbury youth baseball look like and who might be top talent as they get older. When I first started here and I hadn't established those camps, you're just kind of relying on people in town that you get to know. John Nagel, who I mentioned is on our staff, is very well connected in town as a Simsbury resident. And so he was able to, talk to me about kids who may need a reclass post-COVID, or kids that were just looking for a change. And he was really helpful in getting those kids. And then you just start to talk about, hey, we've got, these kids coming in, we're turning this thing around, and here's what we plan on doing. Do you want to be a part of it? And kids really started to say yes to that earlier than even I expected.
Yeah, one of the top selling points to get kids to come to these prep schools too is we've got guys that are getting recruited by this, power conference school or this Division I program in New England. Um, what are you doing to kind of help those guys get those looks and get those offers? Because you've had some big time commitments here in a pretty short time span.
Yeah, so early on, when there wasn't that Power Five or high major commitment list, it was more of trying to sell kids on the connections that I had as a former Division I player, and then having coached high school baseball for a fair amount of time, and starting to get connected with those college coaches. And then once you start to get some of those kids in, kids are drawn to places where they think they could be the next guy to go to that Power Five school or that high major school. And so early on, it was mostly the connections that I had as a coach to college coaches that had been developed when, as a player, and then continued as a coach. And then it sort of morphed into a hybrid piece, which was, wow, they have guys going to those schools, over 20 kids committed to colleges in 4 years. I could be the next guy. Clearly they develop players. And so then, we have that initial conversation and we talk about, here's an example of the notes on recruiting we have for this kid. And they see a list of, 10 to 15 schools that this kid has been in contact with. And we remind them, look, you're going to develop here and we're going to get you in front of college coaches. We don't leverage connections to get you the offer. You have to go out and perform. What all kids want is that opportunity, and families, they want that opportunity. They want the feedback from the coaches. And we make sure that they get that after typically, several years of some really high level player development in our program.
And how many guys do you have right now on your roster that are committed to playing college?
So we have 7 kids in our senior class of 2025, committed to play a mix of Division I and Division III schools, highlighted by Easton Massey going to catch for TI at BC.
Yeah.
And we expect with the group, the 2026 class right now, anywhere from, depending on how the recruiting cycle goes this year, which is coming up upon us, we could have anywhere from another 5 to 7, if not more. But 2 really good juniors on the roster right now that are getting some pretty good Division I interest. And I think the commitment will come either this spring or summer.
Yeah, that's right up there, with probably any of these programs in the Founders League right now. I know Avon Old Farms, they're coming off a Founders League championship. They have a lot of commits. Loomis also has a ton. What do you have to do to kind of keep pace with those guys during the Founders League season here in 2025?
Yeah, and one thing to point out there too, Dan, is we're the smallest school in the Founders League. So
Yeah.
we're 400 students, but it's co-ed. So some other schools are similar numbers, but they might be single sex. We're co-ed, so you're looking at roughly 200 boys. So it's impressive to be able to work with a smaller roster, our guys, and develop and hang with them. But it starts on the mound, and we got to be strong there. And I think we feel pretty good about this year's group. And guys are definitely heading into this year with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder after being really competitive and really close in a lot of ways last year. But yeah, there's a lot of kids, you go out there in the recruiting landscape, kids are looking at schools that you're competing against in the Founders League, and you just do your best to show them what we do here, and they're going to have to make a decision with their family about where they fit in with your roster and who they want to go play for. And you just try to do your best in that regard, and leverage the things that you do well and that are unique to our program to attract them.
Yeah. We've been previewing the prep baseball season over the last couple of months. You guys look like you're going to have a really impressive, right, like you said, up the middle, you're impressive. You got guys who are going to be legit, D1 prospects on the mound. Who do you see kind of shaking out as your top couple of pitchers or your starting pitchers?
Yeah, so we're really excited about Max Williams, who's committed to Tufts. And he's going to build off of a really good junior year and compete. And he's, been as high as 91, 92, but lives in the high 80s. And it's just about mixing pitches and throwing strikes for him. So we're really excited. Got a new guy who we think will be a Division I player, 2026. So he's a junior, Matt Shea. He transferred over from Haddam Killingworth, where he was an all-state player. So we expect him to be really competitive on the mound. Stephen Hamada is a Dickinson commit he's a 6'5" lefty, and there's more juice in the tank. So we'll see what he can do. Really good competitor. So those three guys will be relied upon heavily. And then there's a good supporting cast of some younger guys competing for innings for sure.
Yeah, that sounds impressive. Now I know you grew up, obviously we talked about your dad a little bit earlier. You grew up in a baseball family. You have two brothers, Owen and AJ, who both played for your dad as well. At East Hampton High School in between like 2008 and 2014. Those teams won 3 Shoreline Athletic Conference titles and a CIAC state championship in 2011. What was it like kind of growing up in that environment? Were you guys watching baseball every night? Were you playing in the backyard every day? Or what was that like to grow up in a baseball family like that?
Yeah, I love the question. It was awesome. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I mean, we had a pretty sweet setup for wiffle ball in our yard, and we were all lefties. So we made, sort of like a green monster in right field, which was the house. I don't think my mom was, thrilled about that. But some really epic wiffle ball games. And then, just constantly at the Little League field, going from a high school game to a middle school game to a Little League field, or trying to we all grew up Mets fans because of my dad's New York roots. So if we weren't going to Mets games, we were watching, 150 of them on TV and only missing 12 because we had our own games. So it was fun. It was chaotic. It was super competitive, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. It was fun. And I think the piece that is a little bit lost nowadays in baseball families is there's so much, going to play games, and that's great, but just watching baseball, whether it's big league baseball or going to watch games. I remember as a 4th and 5th grader going to watch my baseball camp counselors play in high school games, riding my bike to the field, just watching baseball and understanding why things happen, the game within the game, I think is a little bit lost on kids and families nowadays. And I'd love to see more kids watch college games. We try to take our team to a college game when we go to Florida instead of a spring training game, just so they can see what does BP look like? What does infield outfield look like? And then the game and watch the game and see what's going on there and why things are going on in the way that they are. So yeah, my youth was crazy. I mean, just a lot of fun and some fights in the backyard stemming from wiffle ball arguments, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah, that sounds like my experience growing up. I was the older brother, so it'd be, we'd play like 7 innings in the backyard, and then I'd start getting bored, and then I'd just start dusting him off with pitches until all of a sudden a fight broke out, and then we'd call it a day. But yeah, those were fun times. And you ended up playing D1 baseball at Fairfield, like coming out of and then the recruiting is so much different now, with the NCAA rules with the roster restrictions and the NCAA transfer portal, where a lot of the recruiting is happening at the college level and not so much at the high school level. What was your recruiting experience like now, more than 10 years ago?
Yeah, it's crazy how fast it's gone by, and it's so different first of all, I would not want to be a kid. I feel bad for in today's recruiting environment. It's so tough because of the transfer portal. That's often the first look for college coaches who want guys who have done it before. So it can be tough to catch on as really talented high school players that are still either uncommitted or not going to the places that, a few years ago they definitely would have been going to. My experience was different in that between high school baseball and travel baseball was not what it was. So I played American Legion baseball, and we probably had, I don't know, 5 to 7 Division I players on our team. It was a couple of small towns teamed up: East Hampton, East Haddam, and Colchester, and Bacon Academy. They have a really good program out in Colchester. So we had some talent, and we would play much bigger towns. Like Middletown had their own Legion team, and we play games Palmer Field, which is a pretty historic place. And college coaches would go to those events. You could go to, camps were somewhat popular, but there was no WWBA that you were going down to, or Diamond Nation. And so you made a recruiting video, you sent it off to some schools, you maybe got a camp invite, that kind of thing. I remember sending off DVDs. I'm dating myself here, but sending off DVDs to college coaches and trying to figure out a spot. And ended up at Fairfield, which I think was amazing because it was a great experience. It was a program that was on the rise then, and Bill Courier's really taken it to another level now. So it feels even better having graduated from there, having my youngest brother having graduated from there and played on that NCAA tournament team. It's where I met my wife. So it was a much different process without social media, and it was kind of emails and sending out DVDs and hearing from some schools and come to this camp and trying to figure out, where could I afford to go to for camp? And then what did it look like in terms of offers and what would make the most sense for my family? And I'm really fortunate that I landed at a place like Fairfield, and sort of forever indebted to, actually, Pat Hall was kind of the primary recruiter, and he's a pitching coach at Central Connecticut now. So have always stayed in touch with him. And it was just looking back on it. It seems like decades ago. It really wasn't that long ago, but it was so different.
Yeah. And then did you play at all after college, or was that the end of your career?
Yeah, I had a couple pre-draft workouts with a few teams, and thought I did pretty well, but it's tough, and decided I wasn't going to pursue any sort of Pioneer League or anything like that, independent ball. So got into coaching, was fortunate enough that Hotchkiss gave me an opportunity, and I'm forever grateful. It was tough sledding there early on, but it was an opportunity. And, I knew that a path, no matter how good you are, to getting, making your way through the minor leagues into the major leagues was tough. And I'd played 2 summers in the Northwoods League, and both of those summers were 70 games in 76 days. And I was on the team in Canada. So, back then my phone didn't work when we crossed the border. So it was a preview of what it would be like, in the minor leagues or in indie ball. And, I think it all worked out for me. I really enjoyed it. And I certainly missed in those first few years after playing, putting on the spikes, but coaching fulfilled that for me, and passing on, my knowledge to kids, and trying to get them to, see the game in the way that I did.
Did you always, I know your dad's, a legendary coach. Did you always imagine that when your playing career was over, you'd be a coach, or was that kind of a spur of the moment decision after your playing career came to an end?
Yeah, I don't know that I ever thought super deeply about it until my playing career was over. And it's crazy because you go from playing a 55 or 60 game Division I schedule, which basically is like a full-time job, at least in the spring. Then for 2 summers, I was in the Northwoods League, and you don't even have time to really think about anything like your post-playing career. And so my senior year, we had made the MAC tournament, and we lost, I believe it was 1-0 and 2-1, or 2-1 and 1-0. We couldn't hit. Our pitching was great, and all just like that, it was over. And I'm like, what do I do now? Like it was a bit of shock. And so slowly, started to think about coaching. But when I started at Hotchkiss, coaching wasn't on the table. It wasn't until, I was there for my interview, and sort of got to know some folks that I said I'd be, love to help out with the program. And then, that sort of was the spark that led me to where I am today.
Yeah. We're going to do the prep coaches poll in a couple of weeks. And I know you're familiar with, most familiar with the teams in the Founders League, but also, you guys play some teams outside of the league too. Who do you think you'll have, as your top couple teams in the coaches poll, which is basically a power ranking of the top 10 teams?
Sure. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think Deerfield finished the year as number 1 last year. Is that right?
I think they did. Yeah. Avon Old Farms was definitely up there, but yeah, I think it was Deerfield.
So I have a lot of respect for Pat and the program he runs there. We played a home and home with them last year, and we would have done that again this year, but our schedules didn't match up. So we're playing them once at Duncan Park, which hopefully is a matchup of top 5 or top 10 teams. But he's the front runner right now. His program, with the way that they reloaded, they've got a bunch of commits, and he runs a really good program, develops guys and sends them to some really good schools. So he's the front runner right now, but schools like Cheshire Academy's loaded. Salisbury, Kevin Huber's done a great job over there. They don't rebuild ever. They just reload. AOF and Loomis and Choate and Taft will be very good in the Founders League. And I think there's prospects all over the place. I mean, it's pretty crazy, but yeah, I have a ton of respect for everybody I just mentioned, but especially for Pat and what he's doing at Deerfield. And I think they may get my vote, but it'll be close. I mean, I'm sure there'll be several teams receiving first place votes, and maybe some of the ones I just mentioned.
Netting Professionals is proud to be the official netting partner of the Cape Cod League and the New England Collegiate Baseball League. Netting Professionals is in the sports business of improving athletic programs one facility at a time. Netting Professionals designs, fabricates, and installs custom netting, wall padding, windscreen, batting practice equipment, and much more for high schools, colleges, commercial facilities, and stadiums throughout the United States, while providing high-quality products and great service to numerous baseball programs throughout the New England area. To learn more and to speak to a Netting Professionals representative today, visit them at nettingpros.com. Remember, when it comes to netting, it's Netting Professionals.
Are you serious about playing your sport in college? Do you need a flexible education that allows you to maintain your practice and competition schedules while also preparing you to succeed at the next level? You should check out the University of Nebraska High School. UNHS is accredited and offers more than 100 online courses, including NCAA-approved courses to protect your academic eligibility. Students could earn a UNHS diploma or take a single course for transfer credit. Courses are college prep, self-paced, and available 24/7, 365. Enroll anytime and take up to a year to complete a course. Visit highschool.nebraska.edu today.
All right, Ty, do you have a minute to hang in for our 3 Up, 3 Down segment with our producer, David Yaz?
Absolutely.
All right, nice.
All right, then. Let's fire up the 3 Up, 3 Down machine. Here we go.
3 Up, 3 Down.
Well, it's spring training time and a time to consider the rules of baseball and possible changes. So today on 3 Up, 3 Down, we'll have three proposals. Some reasonable, maybe some not so reasonable. And we'll get your thoughts, Dan and Ty, on whether you what you think about them. So let's start with this one. Is it possible that baseball could benefit from moving to a completely neutral site World Series similar to the Super Bowl to increase exposure and fairness? Kind of sounds like a wacky idea, maybe not as much fun, but let's give it a whirl. Ty, what do you think of that idea?
You know, I don't think there's anything like playoff baseball. And when people say that, it's not just the way the game's played, it's the crowds. And so I would say, just given the way that baseball is really unique in a lot of ways, I think we got to keep it at there's got to be home field advantage.
All right. Fair enough. Dan, your thoughts?
I agree. Yeah, no, I love the playoff crowds. I'm a Philadelphia Phillies fan, and that environment has been crazy the last 3-4 years as they've been making runs approaching the World Series. They haven't won it, but yeah, I love those home crowds for baseball. I love the fact that you get the home field advantage. I think the weather kind of becomes a problem in February at a lot of these stadiums, and I think it's kind of, the Super Bowl is kind of a corporate event where you're selling a lot of these tickets to CEOs and stuff like that. So I would say baseball is different than football, and let's keep it at the home team. Let's give the home field advantage to whoever has the best record.
Yeah, I'd say of all the great things about the Super Bowl, the fact that it's played at a neutral site is probably not one of the great things, at least not for the average fan. And I've never been to a Super Bowl, but I'm told it's kind of an odd atmosphere because you've got split fans, but then probably more non-fans there, so to speak, than fans, because people that are just VIPs that have gotten tickets. So let's not mess with baseball on that one. It wasn't my idea, I swear. All right, question number 2. All right, it's time to consider the golden at-bat rule. And Dan, I know you've been waiting for this moment, and Coach, I don't know how you feel about it, but Rob Manfred did mention last year that they'd entertain the idea of a golden at-bat. Now, he never talked about the specifics, so the idea of it, of course, is that at some point during a game, you can mess with your batting order and put up presumably your best hitter or a different hitter than the one who's next to bat. Because there are no specifics around it, I've devised some of my own, so see what you guys think. The device may be only used once a game. The golden at-bat can only be used after the 7th inning or in extra innings. It may only be used in tie games or by a team trailing by 3 runs or fewer. You got to have that one in there because otherwise, someone chasing like a home run title in games that are blowouts could be given extra at-bats. We don't want it for that purpose. The golden batter switches, this is getting more complicated. I regret this already, but what the heck. The golden batter switches places in the order with the player he is batting for. The new batting order remains for the duration of the game, even if the game continues into extra innings, etc. And how about this? The opposing team may choose any pitcher on its roster for the one golden at-bat. If they bring in a new pitcher, the pitcher who he replaces may return after the golden at-bat is over. Now, I hope you got all that, but you can talk about the concept generally or whether any details around it might make it work. Dan, we'll let you take that one first.
No, I kind of like the premise of it. I definitely like the idea. I think it would make the game more exciting. I think the problem with bringing anybody that you want in terms of a pitcher to face off with that player is he's got to warm up, So like all of a sudden you're saying, hey, we're announcing, whoever, David Ortiz is going to bat. And then the opposing team's like, oh, we got to get Verlander up in the bullpen, and it just would slow things down. But
that's a good point.
I like the premise. I like the premise of one time during the game, tie game, or a close game. You get to switch spots in the order. I was always thinking it would be like you're pinch hitting for that guy, and then that guy's out of the game. But you're saying you flip the batting order. So yeah, I kind of like the idea. We need to work on it a little bit. But
right. I mean, obviously, pinch hitting is still available.
Yeah.
If you put the golden at bat and switch him out for someone, and that player has to sit, that could work because there's another sort of disincentive there because you need to bring in a new. I don't know. Yeah, we got to work out some of this. Ty, your thoughts on the potential of the golden at bat?
I typically am pretty old school and would reject this firmly, but I'm a Mets fan and we've got Juan Soto, so let's do it.
The thing is, most critics of it say it just, bastardizes the game of baseball. It just changes it too much. But, I mean, somebody came up with the DH one day, and that's probably what they said about that. All right. Third and final question for 3 up, 3 down. Ty, you can take this one first. Many say that the Major League Baseball season is too long. And why does it take 162 games to determine who is the best team? Here's a proposal. There's a split season. So the first half of the season, when that part of the season concludes, whoever is in first place in the divisions secures a playoff spot. Then in the so-called second season, the teams all start at 0-0, and the teams that finish in the second half, if they can also make the playoffs by coming in first. There are some details to be worked out there, but in general, it's obviously very unconventional, maybe even radical. But Ty, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I don't mind it. I mean, that's something that I've seen we did it in the Northwoods League, and they may do it in some other summer leagues where you've secured that spot, and then the second half, I don't know if you've secured that spot, how that plays out, but other teams have an opportunity. So I'd be for it.
All right. Well, that's one vote for yes. Dan?
I think I would be for it too. Definitely need to work out some details just because. So the idea is like you're giving teams incentive for the second half of the year if they get off to an awful start. So you got more teams playing hard throughout the entire season. I think that's a good thing. probably more so in like the NBA. Tanking is crazy.
Right.
In the NFL, not so much, because it seems like even like the Patriots won in the final week of the season this year when all their fans wanted them to
We
lose.
shouldn't have. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, baseball, I think it's great. Add some excitement to the second half for teams that get off to a rough start.
Yeah. The one time it did happen wasn't by design. It was by improvisation when there was a strike, which I believe was in 1981. And as soon as the players went on strike, when they resolved the strike and they came back, Major League Baseball made the decision to allow the teams that had been in first place at that moment to secure a playoff spot. And then the second half winner would also get a playoff spot. So they did that. The one egg on the face of Major League Baseball was Cincinnati Reds finished second in the first half and second in the second half. But as a result, they had baseball's best record over the course of the entire season and did not make the playoffs. We'll have to come up with something to resolve that. But anyway, you've both done very well in 3 up, 3 down. Ty, thanks so much for being a good sport. And back to you, Dan, to wrap things up.
Yeah, I don't remember that 1981 strike. I remember, I think it was like 94. I remember Matt Williams was like approaching that 61 homer mark, and then they just called off the rest of the season. That was a bummer.
Yeah, the Indians had 100 wins that year, and then they canceled the season. They were like 140 or something, ridiculous record. And of course, Indian fans know that's just their luck.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap this up then. Thanks to Ty Wosleger for joining us on the Base Path Podcast. Rate, review, subscribe to the Base Path Podcast on your preferred platform. Thanks to our producer, David Yaz. The Base Path Podcast is a Seamans Media production.